The Scrum Framework Basics, Part 2, the three artifacts. There are three defined elements of the Scrum framework that have to do with what we actually produce. An artifact, in my understanding, is something that a human being creates and we keep it around, we retain it for some future purpose. The three have a logical sequencing to them: product backlog, sprint backlog, and increment. And each of those three have an associated commitment. Let's talk about the three artifacts first. The product backlog, a logical starting point for us. It's simply a list. The list is ordered, one, two, three. There's an expectation that it is emergent, which means that we don't necessarily have all the details when we start, but we expect some of those details will emerge over time. You might have heard the term progressive elaboration, right? That's connected with this idea of emergent. The items in the list are descriptive. Now, that might seem obvious, but we try to keep the descriptions in readable language so that almost anyone, stakeholders alike, can read these line items and understand what's being requested. Scrum also expects that there is some expression of value. Why is this item important? And it's reasonable to often have some form of acceptance test described. What would allow us to verify that what's being delivered meets our expectations. The product backlog is maintained by the product owner, or other people contribute and help maintain it. But ultimately, we look to the product owner as the person who's accountable for the product backlog. Now, you might have other documents, other artifacts that lead to the product backlog. You might have a contract. You might have some scope document, some strategic mission statement, reasonable additional expectations. But within the Scrum framework, the product backlog is the starting point. The product owner brings the product backlog to the beginning of each sprint with their developers and Scrum Master, the Scrum team, and they discuss which items from this product backlog might fit into the coming sprint. The developers then plan how they're going to get that work completed. They record their plan in the second artifact, the sprint backlog. So you can see how the sprint backlog would be created for every sprint, and it's subordinate to the larger product backlog. Now, you might remember from our accountabilities video, I asked you to think about the product owner as the what person and the developers as the how people. Well, I can make the same assignment to these two artifacts. What is the product backlog representing? It's representing the what question. What are we going to be delivering, or what is the product owner asking for? The sprint backlog represents the how question. It's the documented approach of how we're going to deliver. Varying degrees of detail there based on the team, of course, but at a high level, we can see this distinction. The team works on their sprint backlog to deliver product backlog items. And at the end of the sprint, if they have successfully completed creating something that meets their definition of done, they now have the third artifact, the increment. The increment. The increment is simply a term to refer to the work of the team that they have completed. It must meet the definition of done in order to qualify for the term increment. Now, associated with each of these three artifacts, there is a commitment. I have a little bit of trouble with this term, I have to admit. So I'm going to share with you my interpretation of this idea of commitment, and you decide if it makes sense or not. You can go back to the Scrum guide and decide for yourself. The product backlog has an associated commitment that we refer to as the product goal. The product goal is some large overarching expectation. It's usually bound by time or money. So, for example, I used to work in an organization that had a very large customer service area. A product goal might be by the start of the school year, our customer service agents must accept calls from South America, not only in English and Spanish, but also in Portuguese. Notice it's a high level objective. Notice there's some boundary around it by the start of the school year. That would be the goal. We now have an associated product backlog. Why is the goal called a commitment? Well, I believe because what the product owner is saying is, I am committing to the rest of the organization that I will create and maintain this product backlog in a way that supports achieving the product goal. The product backlog is not going to be filled with a bunch of fluff, a bunch of other things that people have asked for. Hey, as long as you're there, can you slip this in? No, the product owner is committing, right, to be financially responsible to the organization, to have the product backlog focus on delivering against the product goal. And once that product goal has been met, the product owner will have another goal. The sprint backlog similarly has an associated commitment that we call the sprint goal. And the sprint goal, as you can imagine, is the subordinate delivery goal for that particular sprint. The product owner could come with a sprint goal at the beginning of the sprint, but it needs to be agreed upon by the entire Scrum team. A subordinate goal is contributing to that larger product goal in some way. Now, during the sprint, the team may have many different things they're working on, but there's a primary objective. And the team is committing, there we go with that word, they're committing that that sprint will focus on delivering the sprint goal. Now we have the increment, and the associated commitment for the increment is the definition of done. Now, we'll have to have a whole separate session on definition of done, but for now, it's adequate to indicate that the definition of done is the list of all the different things that the team must check off, they must complete before they can say this request is done, complete. And the Scrum Guide talks about how once the definition of done has been met, an increment is born. Very poetic language there. Why is that a commitment? Because we're promising that we will not claim victory. We will not claim an item is complete if it has not met this commitment of the definition of done, the list of things that we set out to use as proof that we have indeed completed a job. I hope you find this helpful. We'll have additional sessions that go into more detail about all these different artifacts. Thanks for your time.